So one of the other big games that's coming allegedly this year is Fable. This one is really interesting because, of course, it represents a massive financial investment from Microsoft. And I mean, we've seen some trailers and it does seem like they've poured a lot of money into it. You don't get this level of graphical fidelity, animation polish and stuff without a big old credit card backing it, you know? But this isn't where I want to focus this segment on, because we've talked about Fable and there's not much new to talk about. Not that that's ever stopped us from talking about things before, but still, you get what I mean. Instead, today, I want to talk about what this game is replacing, because it was not always supposed to be this game that rebooted the Fable franchise, which of course was very big back in the day. Rather, the game that was supposed to reboot this franchise was a game called Fable Legends. This might be a throwback if you've not seen these trailers in a long time. This is from E3 2015, okay? Same E3 where they announced like Fallout 4 for the first time. You remember everybody went crazy over it? Same one. And you can see the demo of the game is very, very different from what we have in this new version. So I wanted to do a little deep dive onto this because I never actually found out very clearly what happened to Fable Legends. Of course, it ended up being canceled and abandoned and walked away from, but they were pretty far along with it and then it just disappeared. So I did a lot of really hard Googling and found a video that was recommended by GVMERS, GVMERS, who made a video describing what happened with Fable Legends. And it was posted a year ago, October of 2023. But if this answers the question, I want to see it. So we're going to do a little bitty reaction to this. I recommend you go check out the video yourself. Links will be in the description of the stream clip so you can give them some support. Here we go. Lock and load. The $75 million game that killed its studio, the tragedy of Fable Legends. I also want to say it's funny that $75 million in October 2023 was framed as like a catastrophic blunder. Now, that's like chump change. Concord's like, hold my hot sauce, please.
What if we made a game where choice was at the center of the game, where you could get to the end successfully by being ultimately evil or wonderfully good? That would be really unique. That wouldn't be like playing the role of some pre-canned hero. It would be you, a reflection of you. And how fascinating would it be to get to the end of a game and say, gosh, I really didn't realize I'd be that sort of person.
What began as a quirky role-playing game created in part by one of the industry's most notable auteurs would go on to count among Xbox's most important properties. Fable from Lionhead Studios always boasted a certain charm that meshed well with its fascinating characters and awe-inspiring fantastical world. The 2008 sequel Fable 2 arguably represented the series at its best, considering it took home a BAFTA and a slew of well-deserved Game of the Year awards. This moment...
I do want to just point out, and they might get to it in the video, but Peter Molyneux, people may not know him because he's not done a lot of stuff now, like recently, but he was like one of the biggest big dogs in the industry for a long time. And he made all these wild promises and all these crazy things. One of the things he said about the original Fable was that you'd be able to like plant an acorn in the ground, and they wanted that acorn to grow into a tree. And then you come back in game, you know, years later, and the tree has grown into this beautiful tree. And that kind of was like the vision of it. They wanted it to just be this living, breathing thing where all of your choices had massive consequence. And it didn't end up really being a thing at all. I mean, a lot of the things he promised ended up going absolutely nowhere. One of the other things he did, do you guys remember the Milo demo? This was one of his other projects. It was just like a straight up, it didn't work. But the idea was there was this Kinect experience where there's somebody that is like living inside the console that you talk to.
You have finished your school project.
What happened there is that
Claire knew Milo so well, she knew when he was worried about something. His head was down, he wasn't looking at the camera so much, and this is about you meeting a character, a person.
Well, why?
So he's a very eccentric fellow, and he thinks very big picture, typically far ahead of his time. You know, he's got big ideas. The idea of like you plant the acorn, it grows, and is something you see years later in game. That's something you get now, even in games like frickin' Stardew Valley, which of course is like a farming sim, so you'd hope stuff grows in that game. But there's games with consequence that comes back way later, you know, but that wasn't really that doable back in like 2006 or whatever it was. And nowadays with LLMs and stuff, something like Milo, very, very doable. Super durable. I mean, probably uncomfortably doable, where you have an AI that you can talk with, have a conversation with, and you can have it simulate emotions and present it that way with dynamic animations and stuff. There's all sorts of stuff you could do. So in many cases, he's very far beyond his time, but does that lead to the best video games? Not always, because sometimes it means that you're going to end up with a lot of wasted development time and resources trying to create something that the tech just isn't ready for.
This momentum wouldn't culminate in similar praise for Fable 3.
Oh, dude, I remember these decisions. You remember at the end of Fable 3 when you have these opportunities to like who to execute, where to send the money, or where to send the food? Like, this is a big moment. Big moment. I believe it's at the very, very end of the game, and it's like the final choices you're making. But it's been a long time since I played Fable 3.
No one could have anticipated the third number title marking the end of Fable as fans had known it for the better part of a decade. A cutesy beat-em-up in Fable Heroes and Fable the Journey's magic-fueled Connect adventure trailed far from the franchise's established status quo. But free-to-play game Fable Legends truly subverted expectations, wearing the guise of a big-budget console and PC experience while missing the mark on what made the mainline installment so appealing. In other words, players craved a proper Fable 4, and the team at Lionhead desperately wanted to deliver as much. In fact, studio leads pitched one such project right before Legends started occupying center stage. The proposal didn't receive so much as a passing interest at Microsoft, its gaming vertical preferring to stick the award-winning single-player studio on a multiplayer-only title just as the games-as-a-service craze got underway.
Imagine that. Imagine a story of a multi-billion-dollar corporation forcing a otherwise talented group of devs to work on something they have no experience in, that they're not even interested in, all in the pursuit of quick and easy profits. Can you imagine? If only something like that had happened elsewhere that we could point to. It's unfortunate that this story has just been told time and time again. Fable Legends was like a full decade before PlayStation got into this era. And it seems like they've course corrected a lot. I mean, they of course have gone and bought out live service studios like Activision to pursue the live service releases and to do that. But I think it's because Phil Spencer and his team learned hard early on that you can't take a single player team and have them make a good live service game. They are different skill sets, and the audiences are different. The fans are different. And so if you take a single player studio with single player gaming fans that like narrative stuff and RPGs and that type of thing, and you try to sell those people a live service freemium game, they will not like it, they will not support it, and it will flop. It sounds super simple, because it is, but unfortunately some of these executives have to learn the hard way after wasting hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, they have to learn the hard way, something that they could have learned if they watched a YouTube video from some moron in a basement, you know, but that's just where we are.
This decision begat a host of issues, all of which contributed to Fable Legends' unceremonious cancellation and the untimely closure of the UK development house co-founded by game design luminary Peter Molyneux. This is the tragedy of Fable Legends.
Yeah, what a waste, man.
This video has been brought to you in part by Dungeon Hunter 6.
Oh. It looks like Fable Legends. Why didn't Microsoft just buy this? I would just buy that. That sounds great. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
Founded in 1997 by Peter Molyneux, Tim Rance, Steve Jackson, and Mark Wembley, Lionhead Studios opened up shop with one mission statement: to develop high-quality games while avoiding the trap of expanding more than necessary. Keeping the company's inner circle small didn't translate to the best management standards, though. Former staffer...
I'm sorry, that studio. I've never seen something like that before. They're not even in cubicles. They're on like 4-leaf clover looking desks, and they each sit. There's some people at the end of it, some people in the middle, and the ends. So they're all facing inward towards each other. I've never seen a studio layout like that. That's old Bungie style. It's very weird. I think I would have a panic attack working in an office like that. Like, imagine the guy next to you is really cluttered like this guy seems to be, and it's just trash and paper everywhere. I would unironically turn into Dwight Schrute, where he's got the ruler and he pushes everything to the threshold of the desk. That would be me.
His inner circle small didn't translate to the best management standards, though. Former staffer Charlton Edwards recalled in a Eurogamer interview that Lionhead's early days endured a distinct lack of organization. Yet even without producing...
Hold on, what was the full text? Lack of organization and planning. Quote, they just seemed to be making things up as they went on, but it was a really creative atmosphere. This is something you'll hear with a lot of these like very eccentric, dare I say, visionary developers, is that they don't tend to like a lot of structure. You see it with like how Todd Howard has run BGS, where they don't love to have a lot of, at least in years past, they don't tend to have a lot of bureaucracy filling up the dev cycle. It tends to be a very flat organizational style. That's changed recently as they've grown really big, which seems to be one of the problems. That's something Will Shen talked about in his speech with the other gentleman. I don't recall his name, but they did a speech at a developer conference and talked about how now there's layers and layers of management and approvals and things that things have to go through, which didn't used to be the case. They used to be much more free flowing. It's also something you'll hear about with the development of like the BioShock games under Ken Levine. Very unorganized stuff, restarted all the time. Certain things were being developed and then they'd be cut and restarted. And it just was the free flowing kind of chaotic atmosphere that made those games possible. And they ended up being really, really good, but I think it's not an easy environment or a super professional environment to work on. Naughty Dog also has praised years past. They praised themselves and talked a lot about how flat they were. So there was not a lot of bureaucracy at play. Everybody was kind of working side by side. Problem with that is that peer pressure became a big thing. So if you were not staying late at the office, you felt like you were failing your buddy, not your boss. Because who cares about your boss? If your boss is upset that you're not working late, oh well, cry me a river. But when you're failing your buddy, because it's very flat, then the peer pressure to stay and work late is much worse. And so it seems like recently they've restructured a lot. And so now there's more producers in place to make sure people are not working too much and all that type of thing. So anyway.
Lionhead's early days endured a distinct lack of organization. Yet even without producers and schedules, the make things up as you go approach served the team well for the creation of its debut title, Black and White, which Electronic Arts published to great acclaim in 2001. Striking gold on the first try constituted a net good, as the crew grew from a headcount of about 30 to 100 within a year of Black and White's release. Molyneux would call the move a big mistake many years later, considering such expansion the very antithesis of what Lionhead initially aimed to accomplish. Still, it was this rapid growth that engendered Lionhead's attainment of the Fable concept. Prior to Black and White's completion, studio co-founder Steve Jackson spearheaded Lionhead's Satellites, a selection of smaller indie outfits cultivated but not owned by Lionhead. Big Blue Box marked one such firm, with two of its co-founders having worked at Molyneux's previous company, Bullfrog Productions, in years past.
Bullfrog,
upon entering
man.
the Lionhead fold,
That's
the
a
founders in
throwback.
question, Dean and Simon Carter, brought along the idea that matured into Fable. It didn't take long for the ambitious project to find a permanent home either. Microsoft Game Studios felt the original
Dude, the old
Xbox needed an
controllers.
RPG, and Fable fit the bill. instantly enthralling the console's co-creator, Ed Fries. From Fries' perspective as a longtime fan, Peter Molyneux's attachment to the project was the biggest draw given his industry cachet. Fries and company also firmly believed the RPG bore the markings of a potential tentpole property. Optimism Lionhead fully realized upon releasing the first 2 Fable entries to critical and commercial success. Between those 2 success stories, Microsoft acquired the studio in 2006. French publisher Ubisoft reportedly bid on Lionhead as well. Competition Microsoft couldn't abide lest Fable ended up on PlayStation hardware.
Can you imagine if Ubisoft was successful and bought Fable? You could be seeing Assassin's Creed, Fable, Tom Clancy, Ghost Recon, Division crossovers. Man, we missed out. Bummer.
According to Microsoft Game Studios' former VP and GM, Shane Kim, the acquisition centered wholly on the Microsoft versus Sony war, and not everyone on Lionhead's staff agreed with the decision to sell. Though considering the failed releases of Black and White 2 and the movies, many later concluded the buyout kept the developer afloat. But others were pleased with the purchase, finding the first-party status beneficial to Lionhead in the grand scheme. The good times lasted for only so long, evidenced by 2 inflection points that struck the studio in 2012. Early that year, the developer suffered an event that Peter Molyneux dubbed Black Monday, where veterans disillusioned by the company's direction all resigned on the same day. Interestingly enough, it harkened back to late 2005, amid buyout negotiations with Microsoft, when 4 team members left to establish the eventually Sony-owned Media Molecule. Longtime art director John McCormick counted as one pivotal 2012 departure, resigning in large part because Microsoft rejected a Fable 4 pitch.
This is one of the biggest problems with this sort of like rule with an iron fist type of thing that Microsoft and Sony and just a lot of big corporations will do, is that it drives away creative talent hard. I mean, there's that old interview documentary clip from what's the name of the Psychonauts developer? Double Fine documentary. And it was specifically the interview with Matt Booty when they're all sitting around. Meetings with Matt Booty. Oh yeah, this.
The one thing I saw was the subject about pitches when Booty was like, well, we should have a discussion about that. I think that's fair. And like, he didn't come out and just be like, oh no, you can't do this and we should, you know, we have to.
This was it.
Quit and go run a startup, right?
And they were like, even though they had a nice little handshake agreement, they still ended up having to pay that company.
So if you really want to go run a startup, quit and go run a startup, right?
I mean, when you're telling staff, like, to give you full context, let me rewind a little bit. Sorry.
And that really is going to boil down to making a game.
It's just that
Right here.
the thing is, it's like corporations like Microsoft always have the advantage. Because I've seen this happen to friends of mine who have released games, and this has happened, and then the company has gone after them, and they were like, even though they had a nice little handshake agreement, they still ended up having to pay that company.
So
To be clear, she's asking about when you're brainstorming for a video game and you throw out ideas. If the company you're working for is owned by Microsoft and that company doesn't use your idea, she's saying we should be able to take that idea and eventually go make our own game or go bring that idea somewhere else. If we want to be an indie dev and make a game with that idea, we should be able to do that and not fear a lawsuit from Microsoft, where Sony, like Microsoft comes in and sues them and takes the company over because they're like, no, you pitched that game idea in our studio that we own, so therefore the studio owns and Microsoft owns that idea. It's a big problem. It's a thing that happens all the time in the entertainment industry, and this is Matt's response to it.
so if you really want to go run a startup, quit and go run a startup, right? And so I'm not trying to chase anybody away. That's not trying to be harsh language. But if you work on something and suddenly it starts to pick up traction and you're like, hey, this thing is going big, I think you've got a choice as a person to make. The reality is that once something is kind of in these walls, Double Fine owns it, right?
I don't wear that.
This caused a lot of tension within Double Fine because people were like, I'm not going to throw out my best ideas if I'm afraid they're going to be stolen and come back to haunt me later. Because I threw out an idea and then 10 years later I go indie with it and I make my own game with it. And then Microsoft starts suing me into oblivion because they have notes that I pitched that idea years ago. Like, I'm not going to give you my best ideas now. And the problem with Double Fine especially was because just like with Lionhead, before they were bought out, they were an independent studio where developers never had to worry about that. They could throw out the craziest, most wacky creative ideas they could come up with because it was an indie-owned studio. Like, they were independent. They didn't need to worry about the corporate overlords. And now, as you'll see the head of Double Fine mention here in a second, he's like, we've already had a deal with employees for years that they can throw out anything and it's their idea if we don't use it.
Comes to conflict a little bit is where we do this Amnesia Fortnite pitch.
Yep.
And we have always, as a company, said that we don't own the ideas until we actually produce them in the Amnesia Fortnite game jam. But before people submit them, they work on them in their own time, on their own computers, and they do, at some point, tell the ideas. And a lot of them don't get selected, and we've always maintained that we don't own those.
Yeah, we're going to have to sort through that, because I don't know, someday down the road we might want to go back and say, ha, that was a great idea, you know, we should go make that game, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is something we have to figure out, 'cause we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that look is worth 1,000 books of words. That tells you everything you need to hear, right? And so this is part of the era of Microsoft that, you know, these documentary clips are taken from, you know, years ago. But it does reflect this same era of Microsoft and the same approach where Microsoft is a massive multi-trillion-dollar corporation. They are successful because they rule with an iron fist. But creative types are not software engineers. You know, they behave and act differently. And so when these people saw that Microsoft was coming in and was holding them to the same standard as like a software engineer working on a line of code or a series of, you know, different software systems for server infrastructure to manage temperatures of data centers, like, they're different. The guy that's trying to come up with the art style for the new Fable game, he is going to have a different expectation than the software engineer who's like, okay, yeah, my clever idea for how to mitigate temperature loss in data centers. Oh no, it's not my idea. These guys, they're not gonna do that. Wait, is it retroactive? That's what he was saying they have to talk about, because he's like, well, Microsoft bought the studio. Microsoft buys the studio's ideas. And if the studio has ideas that have been put into the studio ethos, zeitgeist, whatever, because it's been spoken, Microsoft should own that. That's what Matt Booty's saying. And so you see mass departures, people quit because they're like, screw this, I don't want this. And you lose a lot of talent. And I believe that's where this story is going to build, is that a lot of the core talent that made Lionhead so good left. And then when Microsoft realized that Fable Legends was a disaster and not going anywhere, there was nothing really to save at that point. So they were like, what are we going to do? Caleb, thank you for the 10. I'll be honest, I'm not too sympathetic to them. They want the stability and benefits, insurance, steady paycheck, etc. of an actual job, but the freedom of being an artist, you can't have it both ways. I mean, with all things, it's a matter of, you know, they can quit. They can leave if they don't like what the new offer is. If the offer under Microsoft's ownership is that, yeah, you throw out your ideas and your pitches and stuff, but we own them the second you say them. They don't have to stay. They can quit and leave and go somewhere else. Nobody's denying that. And if they don't like the idea, I think they should quit and move on. Go to a different studio. My point in bringing this up is that I think you shouldn't be surprised when you rule with an iron fist like this in a creative setting. You shouldn't be surprised when the creativity stops flowing and you start to get really stagnant ideas and people not wanting to take risks and people not wanting to throw out their best, craziest thoughts because they're worried that they're going to be stolen from them later. Like, I think when you're doing a creative thing, you have to treat it differently than other settings. So Microsoft can manage this way, absolutely. And there will be people who take the job and are happy to be working there, but there will be a lot of other artists and talented people that choose not to work there because it's operated this way. And I think the years and years and stuff that we've seen in the industry show that the more free the artists and creative minds are left to be, the better the games tend to be. And therefore, the studio ends up performing better. I think if you try to run a game studio the way that Microsoft runs a software development team, it doesn't work the same. And I think you end up with a lot of wasted time and dev money and all sorts of crap. But, and I think that, the story of Lionhead is also an example of that. They tried to run a very creative, artsy fartsy studio like it was just another software development team that was working on an update for Windows, and it didn't work out too good. So
Peter Molyneux's exit a few months thereafter especially altered the course of Lionhead's future trajectory. Some ex-staffers said he wanted to pursue the free-to-play social game market that had generated riches for the likes of Zynga. Others believed he'd developed a disdain for Fable, frustrated with being unable to ship anything non-Fable related since 2005. Molyneux himself later admitted that other internal projects were higher on his list of priorities by the time Fable 3 entered the picture. And one specific Molyneux-led endeavor may have laid the foundations for what would someday bear the title Fable Legends.
Uh-oh.
John McCormick envisioned Fable 4 as an Unreal Engine 4-powered adventure with an industrial backdrop, one heavily inspired by late Victorian London. The franchise's fantastical elements would have seeped into the historical period in intriguing ways, with one idea depicting Jack the Ripper in the role of a Balverine, the Fable equivalent of a werewolf-like creature. Microsoft turned down the proposal.
Damn it, Phil! That sounds awesome, Dick. Man. Oh. That's... Okay, might not have been Phil. It was probably whatever, Don Matrick, whatever the hell. But still, come on, Xbox. That sounds like it could have been awesome.
Insisting Lionhead instead steer its focus toward the development of a Fable-branded games-as-a-service title. League of Legends and other popular online-only games at the time had fueled live service mania, fomenting an obsession among publishers eager to create recurring revenue streams. This period was the zeitgeist in which Microsoft reportedly told Lionhead that single-player RPGs and narrative-focused retail games were on their way out. Add that to claims stating the publisher wanted Fable to reach Halo levels of profitability.
It's like having a live service game and wanting it to be your Star Wars. Imagine that. Imagine that.
It made sense that Lionhead allegedly found itself on the receiving end of an unfavorable ultimatum. Either adapt Fable to the service model or close shop. The beleaguered studio dutifully followed its parent company's lead. Conflicting reports tell different versions of the specifics, but many in the know agree. Fable Legends partly spawned from Project Opal, Peter Molyneux's final venture at the company. A village-building sim, Opal bore all the hallmarks of a project trying to satisfy Microsoft's 3 screens on a cloud strategy. An idea built on the basis that phones, PCs, and televisions should share data and services through cloud storage and network connectivity. Molyneux imagined Project Opal benefiting from cloud-based capabilities, wherein PC versions of the experience housed Opal's Village Builder. The mobile iteration serviced its resource-building functionality, and the Xbox provided a shooter-centric aspect, tying it all together. One former Lionhead developer categorized...
Hold on. Did I misunderstand that? Or is he saying he wanted to have one game where you do a third of the gameplay on mobile, a third on PC? Like, so they were going to break it all apart.
Iterations wherein PC versions of the experience housed Opal's Village Builder,
Hold on, okay.
storage, and network connectivity. Molyneux imagined Project Opal benefiting from cloud-based capabilities, wherein PC versions of the experience housed Opal's Village Builder. The mobile iteration serviced its resource-building functionality, and the Xbox provided a shooter-centric aspect, tying it all together.
So they were just going to try to build out 3 different games, basically, at the same time, but they were all the same game, and you needed to play them all together like that. Man.
One former Lionhead developer categorized it along the lines of Assassin's Creed meets Fable meets Minecraft meets SimCity. Whether or not the studio could have ever gotten the ambitious build up and running became a matter of great debate. Either way, in Molyneux's absence, Project Opal was supposedly mined for parts to cobble together the building blocks of Fable Legends. although other ex-Lionhead staffers once claimed Legends originated from a creative day endeavor known as F-Versus, or as some like to think of it, Fable Team Fortress. Project
God.
Opal descendant or not, Microsoft greenlit Fable Legends in 2012 with the understanding that it would launch in the form of a free-to-play service title, information purposefully withheld from the public at the time of its unveiling.
I wonder why.
As Lionhead Studios entered its so-named 2.0 era without Molyneux leading the charge, the well-established development house suddenly began wading into unfamiliar territory. Unbeknownst to those involved, such a daring enterprise signaled the beginning of the end for the once fabled studio.
Yeah, you remember these showcases where they would have like the different players standing on different platforms, and it was like, see their friends playing, trying to demonstrate that, like, oh, see, it's a shared experience. Now you do this, people, I think you'd immediately get booed. It's funny how people like multiplayer games. People play them. Millions and millions and millions of people play mobile games or play multiplayer games. But when you're trying to sell something to single player games, or when you're trying to sell a multiplayer game to single player gamers, they always try to do it like this for some stupid reason. And it never works. It never, ever works. It's like those old Ubisoft demos from like the 2016-17 era where they're doing like a Rainbow Six mission, and then it's like the most fake friendly dialogue. Oh, I see a target up there. You get him? And then Jessica goes, yeah, got him. Never stood a chance. And then they go back to Tom, and Tom's like, oh yeah, well, especially with your loadout. And it's always like weirdly snuck in marketing stuff. It's like, with your loadout and then that cool cosmetic you've got, they never stood a chance. It's like, shut up. Shut up. Nobody thinks this is candid. Everybody knows what you're doing. I don't know what type of room temperature IQ we would have to think that that was real. But please stop. Please. For the love of God.
Unsurprisingly, Lionhead underwent quite a season of change while producing its first post-Molyneux project. The studio culture had to evolve from one centered around an auteur and became more structured in the process. Yet, learning how to build a free-to-play game without past exposure required Herculean effort. Thus, fresh hires joined the crew, including new head of studio John Needham, who'd previously worked on Marvel Superhero Squad Online, and former mobile game consultant David Eckelberry, who took over as Fable Legends creative director. The outfit eventually narrowed down a core conceit for the would-be online adventure, designing Legends in the style of a 4v1 game, wherein 4 heroes fought off monsters under the thrall of a playable villain. This asymmetrical brawler/RTS hybrid provided the heroes with team-based co-op gameplay and mixed in top-down defense tactics for the lone villain player. But even with Needham and Eckelberry's expertise, Lionhead struggled to break its compelling premise into fun, actionable systems. For example, developers knew Legends demanded a progression system that would feed into an escalating power fantasy. There were disagreements about how said system should function, though, so establishing a few basic rules proved an absolute must. One such rule dictated that levels couldn't sit too high, lest the villain's camera struggle from its bird's-eye perspective. Additional challenges that required roundabout solutions concerned balancing the hero and villain dynamic. Leveling differences between hero and villain characters caused much contention. Same with determining the amount of access heroes should have to health potions under specific circumstances. By the end of 2014, roughly 2 years into development, uncertainty about the game's overall design ethos still lingered.
It never ceases to amaze me how these people can get, like these dev teams can get years and years into a project and still not know how to make it fun, like, or engaging or captivating. It was one of the most interesting things about like the development of Starfield too. I remember seeing that interview where Todd talked about how hard it was to find the fun. Yeah, Starfield proved to be an especially difficult project. Howard previously said that it took 7 years of development to really find the fun in the game, and that he thought he would find the answers faster. Like, It was only in 2022, Starfield's original release year, that the RPG was fun to play, according to the devs. But that's also a thing here where they're like, yeah, we're struggling to find a way to make it, you know, a game that people want to play. It's like you would think that they would start with like a compelling idea. I've seen, you know, Kickstarters where they have a prototype that you download and launch the executable yourself. And it's a prototype that they've built in like a matter of months. And they find a prototype that's fun, and then they build it into a whole game based around that prototype. But with this, it's always amazing to me how you can have these games that are built on the premise of like the end goal, which is live service, money. It'll keep the studio afloat. We'll get lots of players because it's live service and it's got mobile stuff. You all have phones, don't you? You'll love it. Like, and you'll be able to play it anywhere. So it'll be super successful. But they never start, like these disasters never start with just the really compelling gameplay idea that people find captivating to begin with. It always starts with the end goal, or like with the idea of what you want it to be. You know, we want it to be the ultimate space sim, space exploration game. Why is that fun? Like, what's the fun part of it? Because simulation games are not always fun. Like, they can be satisfying, but they're not always fun. So, like, maybe it's not supposed to be fun. No, we want it to be fun. Okay, well then how are we going to do that? I don't know yet. Oh, okay.
Inspiring the hiring of a competitive multiplayer specialist for consultancy purposes. Former developers claim that while the consultant pinpointed various problem areas and offered insight about possible solutions, their advice ultimately went unheeded. Yet Fable Legends' biggest obstacles stemmed from technical woes that impeded development progress at almost every turn. Unreal Engine 4 powered the title, but Lionhead gained access before the engine's completion, meaning developers were often charged with implementing updated versions of the tools while concurrently designing the game. This start and stop affair added months to the production cycle, a time sink further exacerbated by instances of the engine's revised features and bug fixes introducing previously unseen glitches to the mix. Another manner of technical problem manifested whenever Microsoft used Legends as a guinea pig for its latest initiatives. In January 2015, for instance, the company started building the project as Windows 10 and Xbox One friendly. News dictating that Legends would boast cross-platform play functionality.
The devs are like, what? What? What do you mean?
But since Lionhead entered development with a Steam release in mind, this sudden change in plans opened the gateway to potential cheating issues. Microsoft's growing interest in boosting PC graphics and performance with DirectX 12 forced the Fable Legends creators to adjust to yet another technological advancement. The publisher's predilection for showcasing DirectX 12 with Legends demos heightened the pressure too. Reportedly, these types of mid-production additions at least partly contributed to the protracted development cycle. And yet, such corporate-level decisions hardly represented the worst offenses committed against the brand's final hurrah under Lionhead's stewardship.
Dude, it's just so funny because it's like a perfect like exemplification of everything wrong with like big corporate businesses trying to run creative enterprises. It's so funny how just one-to-one it all is. It's so funny to me. It's so funny. And also depressing.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Fable was the first game I ever worked on the original Xbox. So I have a ton of excitement about the work that Lionhead's doing to create the new iteration of the franchise. Lionhead Studios is creating...
The Fable Legends reveal took audiences by surprise during Gamescom 2013, due in no small part to the fact that it wasn't the coveted Fable 4. Set amid Albion's Age of Heroes, about 400 years ahead of the first game's events, Legends promised a 4-player cooperative adventure with an asymmetrical multiplayer bent. Fans were intrigued from the outset, albeit skeptical of the integrated cloud functionality that necessitated online-only access. Skepticism ballooned as more information trickled out. Speaking with IGN in the months following the announcement, creative director David Eckelberry insisted the new multiplayer focus wouldn't completely overshadow Fable's usual storytelling element. He went on to tease the game's episodic content model, saying,
God. I know we're in 2025 and time has passed, and maybe in 2013 hearing episodic content model was exciting, but that sounds so horrible. It's like, yeah, this game series that you previously played, because it was like sort of an RPG and it was about compelling narratives and characters in this sort of open world setting that was really captivating and compelling. It's like, well, we're going to make it episodic, live service, always online, and asymmetric multiplayer. It's like, you could not have ended farther from where we started if you were trying. It's amazing.
You should expect the experience to unfold in terms of seasons and content, such that its launch would mark Season 1 with new quests and storylines releasing piecemeal as DLC. According to Eckleberry, Lionhead built Legends to adapt and evolve over the course of several years. Eckleberry's comments stopped short of specifying long-term intentions, leaving series faithful to guess at what the studio had in store. Some eagerly awaited additional information, imagining Fable as an MMO light akin to Diablo 3. Meanwhile, more skeptical members of the community remained unconvinced that Legends deserved the Fable branding. This thinking persisted well past the E3 2014 gameplay reveal. Critics who went hands-on with the game shared their uncertainties as well. An IGN reporter wrote of enjoying the villain role, but felt the playable hero characters were less inspired. All in all, Legends provided standard dungeon crawling fare, yet did nothing to play on the franchise's distinct strengths. Even the gorgeous setting of Albion wasted Unreal Engine 4's raw power on compartmentalized dungeon designs. And it didn't help that Eckleberry advised a visit to the Legends website when asked about character backstories, implying such...
He's like, it's not going to take away from the things that the original games did well. We're not taking away from the story, the character. No, we're not taking away from that. But if you want to find out about them, you need to open up your phone and go to www.fable.com. It's like, so you've taken it away and put it over here. So you've taken it away. No, because we put it over there. Yeah, but you took it away from here, which is where we wanted it. And now it's over there. It's just like amazing. Yeah, oh my God. It's so...
Such details wouldn't be communicated in-game, and thus heightening concerns that Lionhead's latest was Fable in name alone. Select players were able to judge the action for themselves when a closed beta test went live in October 2014. Yet, the game remained shrouded in mystery in some respects, with Microsoft finally lifting the veil on its games as a service model in February 2015. The publisher reportedly baked the free-to-play strategy into development very early on, but the public-facing reason for the decision prioritized making the game available to as many players as possible. It was expected that availability across PC and Xbox One would arrive by the end of 2015. Instead, that December brought news of the open beta's postponement to 2016. An official statement from Lionhead claimed that while the game progressed nicely, the delay came as a result of the developers believing they could make it even better. Unfortunately, they never got the opportunity to guide Fable Legends to its fullest potential.
Oh, God.
Sadly, this week is starting off on the wrong foot. Fable Legends and Project Knoxville have been canned, and Microsoft is possibly closing Fable developer Lionhead Studios and officially shuttering Press Play Studios. On the big shakeup, Microsoft said, "We have nothing but heartfelt thanks for the members of Lionhead."
Oops.
On March 7, 2016, Microsoft announced the cancellation of Fable Legends and the imminent closure of Lionhead. The official Xbox Wire statement from Microsoft Studios Europe, which also publicized the closure of Project Knoxville developer Press Play Studios, said the changes would allow the gaming division to focus its investment and development on the games and franchises that fans found most exciting. The unexpected news left the affected companies reeling. Lionhead staff, in particular, had no idea why everything fell apart so suddenly. Yet former employees who spoke with Eurogamer anonymously pointed out a few possible motivating factors behind Fable Legends' failure.
I'm guessing that nobody wanted to play it. That might be part of it. Might be a little part of it.
One source placed the blame on mismanagement, claiming those involved with the day-to-day knew full well that Legends lacked both a fun factor and quintessential free-to-play features. Others argued the fault lay at the feet of Microsoft's free-to-play mandate, especially since core gamers distrusted the model and felt burned in the past by microtransactions. Worse still, the publisher had overfunded the project. One of Lionhead's ex-higher-ups estimated the budget sat in the $75 million range,
Jesus.
far too costly of an investment in the free-to-play scene. Similar service games were often made cheaply and released in an early state, then iterated on while simultaneously expanding the player base. On the contrary, Microsoft pictured Fable Legends as a flagship title, aimed at being bigger and more polished at release. From the outside looking in, it flew too close to the sun. In addition, those in the know maintain that most developers harbored little in the way of love for Fable Legends. Like the user base, Lionhead employees would have preferred Microsoft's investment in Fable 4. Sour feelings didn't prevent a small group of Legends alum from trying to salvage the multiplayer endeavor, though. After production ceased, core crew members banded together for Project Phoenix, an attempt at completing and shipping Fable Legends under a new studio banner that licensed the IP from Microsoft. The hope was that Project Phoenix would safeguard numerous jobs and revive Lionhead's final Fable adventure. Thanks to interest from 2 Chinese companies, the plan nearly became reality. Negotiations lasted for too long, though. By the time former developers outside of the core team caught wind of Project Phoenix, most had already landed on their feet elsewhere. One person explained that while Microsoft supported the idea, those involved simply ran out of time. And perhaps Fable Legends' failings can be best illustrated by the notion of bad timing. Announced during a fragile period for Xbox when Xbox One's marketing blunders were still making waves, a Fable-themed live service hardly stood a chance. The premise practically oozed potential, but Microsoft's supposed technology-driven mandate and overly bullish live service approach seemingly left little room for the charm of Fable to shine through. A glimmer of hope peeks over the horizon, however. Microsoft has handed over the keys to the kingdom, throwing its weight behind a brand new Fable from Forza Horizon studio Playground Games. Xbox marketing boss Aaron Greenberg called the Playground-developed title a fresh start, promising fans a role-playing game through and through. While a traditional Fable, if done right, could inject the beleaguered IP with a fresh burst of energy, it's a shame that Lionhead's own vision for a fresh start was dismissed in favor of an online-focused experiment that never made it beyond the beta phase.
Really is remarkable. I think it's a series of mismanagement. I mean, obviously they pitched Fable 4, that was shut down, and so a lot of the core team from Fable was so frustrated that they left in 2012, and then, you know, Fable Legends just floundered for 4 years. So, you know, it's not a surprising outcome. But what I just find so fascinating is that it is another one of these stories of just years and tens of millions of dollars wasted on a live service game that nobody wanted. Like, from the outset, you could have asked any average, like, Fable fan, is this something you'd connect with? And they would have been like, hell no. Give me anything else. Give me Fable 4. That's what I actually want. I don't want a live service asymmetric multiplayer game that's episodic and filled with microtransactions. No, stop it. But, you know, unfortunately, these corporations typically have to learn the lesson the hard way. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I guess that wasn't a good idea. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Imagine not asking players what they want. Well, what they do is they hire consultants. You remember the guy that they showed? Where is he? Where is that fella? This guy. They hire a consultant who comes in. Yeah, this guy. The consultant who has worked on very successful mobile games. And they hire him to basically tell them what they want. That multiplayer games are the future. This will make tons of money. And then he helps provide feedback on it to make it more like a mobile game. But again, it's all built on the premise that, for one, Fable fans will connect with it. And I think that this is also another piece of it. When you're making an IP in an established franchise, I understand why some would think that it starts the race a lap ahead, right? Because, oh, it's got name recognition. It's in an established franchise that has a fan base. Even if not everybody in the fan base comes over to play it, we're still starting ahead of a brand new IP that nobody's heard of, right? So the idea is that you make it as part of an established franchise and you start the race with an advantage. But I think what is often missed is that gaming as a hobby is very easily influenced by like peer pressure and by sentiments and things. And when you have an established franchise that's known for one thing, narrative RPGs, and then you try to make a live service asymmetric multiplayer game that's episodic, that fan base will hate on it. They will swarm it, downvote it. They will complain about it. They will rage about it. They'll make videos about it. They'll make streams about it. They're not happy, and they will let you know. And in gaming, nobody wants to be playing the uncool game. Like, nobody. Everybody wants to be on what's popular, on what's cool, on what their friends want to play. Especially with multiplayer games, they want to be playing the multiplayer games that their friends want to play. And their friends don't want to be playing a game that nobody else wants to play. So it just creates this self-fulfilling circular thing where it's like nobody wants to play Concord because everybody jokes about how terrible Concord is, but Concord's terrible because nobody plays it, and some other stuff. But it just creates this cycle where it's like doesn't get players, so the game is worse, and then the game is even worse, so even fewer players come out to play it, and before long it's just spiraled down into the drain. And with this, I think with so many of these live service games with established IP as the founding part, it misses one of the core problems with it, which is that the core fan base may revolt. And actually, instead of you starting the race ahead, you might start significantly behind, because every time there's a trailer, every time there's an announcement, anytime there's anything like that, you're getting mass downvoted. The comment section is filled with negativity, which is not something you want on your live service game when you want people to get hyped for it. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work as smoothly as they think. And a lot of these companies have to learn the hard way. But you see it even now. I mean, even now, Sony, with some of their live service announcements and stuff, if they start their showcases with it, you see the videos mass downvoted. You see the entire PlayStation showcase downvoted if they spend a lot of time talking about Concord or Fair Game $, because the players don't want it. And so even if the game is like relatively good, it's starting behind because people start with the prejudice against it. It just is what it is. Obviously, Larian needs to make a 5v5 hero shooter, Luke. I mean, if they were owned by Microsoft circa 2014, they probably would have been assigned to make a live service game. Or if they were owned by PlayStation 3 years ago, they probably would have been assigned to do that. He took my thing.